At 80, I've learned many valuable lessons about life, but there's one decision I deeply regret: moving into a nursing home. At the time, it seemed like the right choice. My family encouraged it, promising me that I'd have all the care and comfort I needed. I trusted them. But once I got there, I realized that the reality was nothing like what I had imagined. I know many of you might be considering this option either for yourself or a loved one. Maybe you think it's the safest choice, or perhaps you've been told it will make life easier. But before you make that move, I want to share 6 things I wish someone had told me before I moved in. Because the truth is, life in a nursing home isn't just about convenience, it changes everything. And once you're in, getting out isn't as simple as you might think. Stay with me until the end, because some of these lessons might surprise you. And if you know someone who's considering a nursing home, this video might be exactly what they need to hear before making such a life-changing decision. But the first part of myself I noticed slipping away wasn't my confidence or my social life, it was my independence. And that loss, though subtle at first, shook me more deeply than I ever expected. Before I moved into the nursing home, my days had a rhythm that was mine. I wasn't running a business or raising a family anymore, but I was still running my life. I decided what time to get up. I chose whether to eat breakfast early or wait until after my morning walk. I brewed my coffee just the way I liked it, strong with 1 sugar and a splash of cream, and sipped it slowly as the sunlight crept across the floor. They were small things, really, but they added up to something big, a sense of control over my day, my space, and my choices. They reminded me that I was still the one steering this ship. When I moved into the nursing home, that sense of control began to disappear. Suddenly, I was on someone else's schedule. Breakfast was served at 7:30 sharp, whether you were hungry or not. Lights out at 9:00, even if you weren't tired yet. Bathing days were assigned, not requested. There were rules for when to open the window, where to sit in the dining hall, even how often you could leave the building. And every one of those little rules chipped away at something inside me. It wasn't about being treated poorly. The staff were kind, respectful, and professional. But that didn't change the fact that I was no longer in charge of my own life. I remember one morning during my first week there, I woke up a little late, reached for my slippers, and glanced toward the window where I used to watch the birds while I read. The chair was different, the view was different, even the light felt unfamiliar. I reached for my book out of habit, but it wasn't there. My daughter had forgotten to pack it, and no one could find another copy in the facility's small library. It was such a small thing, a missing book. But in that moment it hit me, I wasn't in my space anymore. I was in someone else's. And it doesn't take long for the loss of independence to become a new normal. You start adapting not because you choose to, but because you have no other choice. You stop asking to eat later or walk alone because the answer is always the same. You stop pushing back when someone rearranges your room or chooses your outfit. It's easier that way, quieter. But slowly, that silence becomes something heavier: resignation. I saw it happen to a neighbor down the hall. Her name was Lucille. She was 84, sharp as a tack, and always used to say, "I may be old, but I'm still the boss of me." For a while, she kept to her routines, getting up early to braid her hair and read the morning paper. But after a few weeks of being told breakfast couldn't be moved, and newspapers didn't always arrive on time, she stopped asking. "It's just easier to go along with it," she told me one afternoon. Fighting for the little things starts to feel foolish when no one else seems to mind. And just like that, the parts of her that made her feel like Lucille began to dim. The truth is, the loss of autonomy isn't just inconvenient, it's damaging. A 2020 study published in the journal The Gerontologist found that older adults in institutional settings who had less control over daily decisions reported significantly higher rates of depression and lower overall life satisfaction than those with more autonomy. Another report from the National Institute on Aging confirmed that personal choice in things like mealtime activity scheduling and daily routines had a direct impact on mental and even physical health in long-term care residents. Independence, it turns out, isn't a luxury. It's a form of medicine for the soul. But in a nursing home setting, it becomes one of the first things to go, not because anyone is cruel, but because it's hard to run a facility with dozens of people on individual schedules. Standardization is more efficient. Predictable routines make staffing easier, and so the residents adapt, but often at the cost of their identity. That's what made it so hard. It wasn't that I couldn't walk when I wanted to, or eat when I felt hungry. It was that I couldn't choose. And when you take away a person's choices, even the small ones, you start taking away their sense of self. It's not just about food, or clothes, or sleep. It's about feeling like your life still belongs to you. So if you're thinking about moving into a nursing home or helping a loved one decide, ask yourself this: are you ready to give up the small freedoms that make your life feel like it's still yours? Because once they're gone, you may miss them more than you ever thought possible. And getting them back, that's not always in your control. One of the hardest things about losing your independence in a nursing home is that it doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually, quietly, until one day you realize you're not living your life, you're just following along. And the scariest part is how easy it is to stop noticing. At first, you tell yourself it's just temporary. You convince yourself that following the routine is practical, that going with the flow will make everything smoother. And maybe it does. Maybe things feel more manageable when you stop resisting, but there's a price for that comfort, and it comes in the form of something very subtle, the slow fading of your identity. You stop being the person who always made their bed a certain way, or needed their coffee extra hot, or listened to classical music while they read the morning news. Instead, you become a name on a clipboard, a room number, a schedule slot. The person you've always been gets replaced with someone who fits better into the system. And it's not malicious. It's just how the system is built. It's easier for caregivers to work within structure, and with so many residents, to care for flexibility often falls by the wayside. But what gets lost in that efficiency is something priceless, the uniqueness of a life lived with intention. I remember speaking with a staff member who had been working in elder care for over a decade. She told me, "Sometimes I worry that we're too focused on keeping people safe and not focused enough on helping them feel alive." That stuck with me, because safety, while important, should never come at the cost of dignity or purpose. It should never mean you stop having a say in how your day unfolds. A 2021 survey by the American Health Care Association found that nearly 60% of nursing home residents felt they had little or no control over their daily activities. And that lack of control, according to mental health experts, contributes significantly to depression, anxiety, and even a shortened lifespan. When you take away a person's ability to make decisions, even small ones, you take away a part of their will to live. It's not just about stubbornness or pride. It's about being human. Humans are meant to choose. We are built to act with purpose, not just be acted upon. And when we lose that freedom, especially in later life, we often lose our spark. I saw it in a man named Walter, who used to live just 3 doors down from me. Walter had been a firefighter, the kind of man who carried strength in his voice and pride in the way he walked. When he moved in, he still got up early, polished his shoes, and kept his posture straight. But little by little, those habits faded. He stopped getting up early because breakfast was always the same. He stopped polishing his shoes because no one else noticed. He started sitting more, saying less. One day I asked him if he wanted to join a game in the activity room. He shrugged and said, "What's the point?" That moment broke something in me, because I knew what he meant. When you're not needed, when your choices don't matter, it becomes harder to care. And when you stop caring, a part of you shuts down. That's the cost of losing independence. It's not just logistical, it's emotional, even spiritual. Your world shrinks. Your voice quiets. And even if you're still breathing, you no longer feel fully alive. That's why I believe we need to talk about this, not to blame anyone, but to ask better questions. What if we designed elder care around autonomy instead of efficiency? What if we trained caregivers not just to assist, but to empower? What if instead of asking, "What time should we get her up?" we asked, "What time does she want to get up?" It might sound small, but those small acts of choice add up to a much bigger feeling, one that says, "You still matter. You are still you." If you're listening to this and wondering whether a nursing home is right for you or someone you love, I'm not here to tell you what to do. But I am here to tell you this: don't underestimate the power of the small freedoms. The freedom to wake up on your own terms. The freedom to choose what you eat or what you wear. The freedom to walk outside without waiting for permission. These aren't little things. They're the threads that hold your sense of self together. And once those threads unravel, it's hard to stitch them back. So before you make the move, ask yourself the real question. Not just, is this safe, but will I still feel like myself here? Because safety means nothing if it comes at the cost of your soul. That's why, if I could go back to the beginning, back to that moment when the brochures were laid out on the kitchen table and the words nursing home were first spoken out loud, I would ask a very different set of questions. Not, is it clean? Or, how's the food? Or, do they have bingo nights, though? All of that matters in its own way. No, I would ask, how much say will I still have over my life? Because the truth is, once you enter a system built for order, the first thing to go is your freedom to live out of order, to make your own choices, even the messy, inconvenient ones. And it's those choices, those little personal decisions that make life feel real. They're the difference between living and simply being managed. People talk a lot about dignity, but they often think it's just about being treated respectfully. That's part of it. But real dignity is deeper. It's about feeling like you're still the author of your own story. Not a footnote in someone else's schedule. Not a passive character being moved from room to room. I remember watching a woman named Rose, who was once a high school principal. She had that quiet authority about her, even in her 80s. She still corrected your grammar if you used less instead of fewer. At first, she asked the staff to call her Mrs. Whitaker. She dressed up every morning, applied lipstick, and sat by the window with a crossword puzzle. But over time, I watched that sense of self soften. Not because she changed, because the environment changed her. When people started calling her Sweetie instead of Mrs. Whitaker, she stopped correcting them. When they forgot her puzzle book, she stopped asking for it. When someone picked out her clothes without asking, she just wore them. I asked her one day if she wanted me to bring her anything from the little bookstore nearby. She smiled politely and said, "No need, dear. I don't read much anymore." But I knew that wasn't true. I'd seen her bookshelf. She used to devour novels like they were lifelines. But now, with no one to ask, no one to bring the books, and no energy to argue for herself, she had simply let that part go. That's what happens when independence isn't taken, it's eroded. One decision at a time, one overlooked preference, one assumed routine. It's not loud, it's not cruel, it's quiet, it's gradual. It's invisible to anyone who isn't paying close attention. And, for those of us living it, it feels like we're slowly fading into the wallpaper. That's the hardest part to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. You're not just adjusting to a new environment, you're being redefined by it. And it's so easy for others to miss it. They see clean floors, kind nurses, regular meals. They see safety. What they don't see is the person sitting by the window remembering a life where they got to decide what that window looked out on. A study by the National Institute on Aging revealed that when older adults were allowed to make more day-to-day decisions, everything from meal choices to room decor, they experienced a 40% improvement in mood and engagement levels compared to those in more rigidly structured settings. It's a reminder that even in later life, agency matters. Choice matters. Feeling like you still count, like your opinion shapes your day, that matters more than we think. And here's the truth, no one wants to admit once you give up your independence, getting it back isn't guaranteed. Even if you leave the nursing home, even if you return to your old house, you might not return as the same person. Because when you spend long enough not choosing, you forget how. You stop trusting yourself. You question whether you're capable. You shrink just a little, and then a little more. Until one day, even when freedom is handed back to you, you don't quite know what to do with it. I've seen people go through that spiral. I've felt parts of it myself. That's why I'm sharing this, not to scare anyone, but to wake you up before it happens. If you're considering this path for yourself or for someone you love, pause. Take a breath. Ask the hard questions. Visit more than once. Ask what time residents wake up. Ask how many choices they get each day. Ask if someone will help you keep your routines, not replace them. And more than anything, ask yourself what kind of life you still want to live, because you deserve more than just to be taken care of. You deserve to still feel like you matter. You deserve to be known, not just managed. You deserve to make decisions, even small ones, right up until your last day. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. When I think about everything I've shared so far, the loss of independence, the quiet fading of identity, the subtle ways dignity is worn down, I realize there's something else I haven't mentioned yet, something that might be the most painful part of all. It's the moment you stop recognizing yourself. You look in the mirror one morning and don't see the person you used to be. You see someone older, yes, but more than that, you see someone quieter, smaller, less certain. Not because age stole your strength, but because the environment chipped away at your confidence, piece by piece. And it doesn't always come with sadness. Sometimes it comes with numbness. That's the real danger. You stop caring about things that once made your day feel whole. You forget the joy of choosing your own breakfast or rearranging your room just the way you liked it. You stop noticing the little indignities because noticing them hurts too much. And so, like many others, you adapt. You blend in. You become part of the system that was supposed to help you. And before long, you begin to ask fewer questions, express fewer opinions, and accept more things that never felt acceptable before. I remember one night in particular. It was quiet, the hallway dimly lit, and I had trouble sleeping. I wandered to the common room and saw Harold sitting in his wheelchair staring at the television that was playing some late-night infomercial. He had once been a school bus driver, always had stories, always cracking jokes about the kids he drove. But that night, he didn't say anything. He didn't even notice I was there at first. I asked if he was okay, and he said, "I think I forgot who I was supposed to be. I didn't know what to say. I just sat with him in the quiet." And that moment never left me, because Harold wasn't sick. He wasn't losing his memory, but he was losing his sense of self. And that happens to more people in places like this than we care to admit. It's not just about age. It's about systems that are designed for order rather than humanity. It's about environments where the most efficient path isn't always the most compassionate one. And when we stop building places that allow people to be fully themselves, we start creating places where people slowly disappear while still being alive. That's why so many older adults who move into nursing homes report a drop in emotional well-being, even if their physical needs are well cared for. According to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, up to 35% of nursing home residents show signs of depression, and that number climbs even higher when autonomy is limited. These aren't just numbers, they're reflections of people who once led full independent lives. People like you. People like me. And the most frustrating part is that many of these outcomes are preventable. When older adults are given the chance to participate in decisions about their care, their rooms, their routines, and their interactions, their quality of life improves. Studies from the AARP and the World Health Organization consistently show that a sense of autonomy and purpose in later life is linked to better health outcomes, fewer hospitalizations, and even longer life expectancy. So why aren't we doing more to preserve those things? Why do we let systems, however well-meaning, erase the very freedom we spent a lifetime building? I don't have all the answers, but I do know this: the more we speak up, the more likely it is that things will change. The more we demand dignity, not just comfort, but real dignity, the more likely we are to build environments that truly honor aging rather than just manage it. So, if you're standing at the edge of this decision, if you're looking at a brochure, talking to your children, weighing your options, I beg you to think carefully. Don't just look for safety. Look for life. Ask what will keep you connected to yourself. Ask who will still see you as the person you are, not just the patient you've become. Ask if your choices will still matter on day 10, day 100, day 365. Because once you stop asking, it's hard to start again. And once you give up the little freedoms, the ones that seem too small to fight for, you may look up one day and realize they were the very things holding you together. That cup of coffee in your favorite mug, that walk you take before breakfast, that quiet moment where no one interrupts your thoughts. They may not seem like much now, but believe me, they're everything. They are pieces of your identity, your history, your soul. And they deserve to be protected. You deserve to be protected. Not just your health, not just your body, but your spirit. Because in the end, that's what aging well truly means. Not just living longer, but living fully. On your terms, as yourself. Looking back now, I don't regret growing older. I don't regret the wrinkles, the gray hair, or the slower pace. What I regret is believing that a nursing home was my only option. I regret not asking more questions, not looking harder for alternatives, not trusting my instincts when something deep inside me whispered, "This isn't what you need." I went along with the decision because it seemed like the practical thing to do. My children were worried about me living alone. I had a fall in the kitchen, and everyone panicked. Suddenly there were family meetings, brochures, financial talks, and the constant echo of words like safety supervision and support. And I'll admit I was tired. I thought maybe it would be easier to let someone else take over, but easier doesn't always mean better. And sometimes the thing that seems safest ends up being the most soul-draining. That's why I wish someone had sat me down and talked to me honestly about all the other ways to age with dignity. I wish someone had shown me that home care wasn't just for the very wealthy, or that assisted living could offer a middle ground between total independence and total dependency. There are home care services today that can help with meals, bathing, and medications while still letting you wake up in your own bed, water your plants, and hear the familiar creak of the floorboards when you walk down the hallway. And there are assisted living communities where you have your own private apartment, your own keys, your own schedule, but with help nearby if you need it. There are even adult day programs for older adults who want to stay home but need a little support and companionship during the day while their families work. These options exist, but too often we don't talk about them until it's too late. We wait until the emergency happens, until the hospital stay, until the decision is rushed. And when that happens, people like me are moved into places they never really chose, for reasons they never fully understood, and by the time they realize what they've lost, it's already slipping too far out of reach. I don't blame my family. They were doing the best they could with the information they had. But now that I've lived through it, I feel like it's my responsibility to speak up, to tell the truth no one told me. Because if it helps even one person make a more informed choice, if it helps someone ask better questions, explore other paths, or hold on to their independence just a little longer, then maybe this story will have done some good. So if you're in that place now, standing at the crossroads, unsure of what comes next, I encourage you to slow down. Don't let fear drive the decision. Let values lead the way. What do you truly need? What parts of your life are non-negotiable? What gives your days meaning, and are you willing to risk losing that for the sake of convenience? Because in the end, it's not just about where you live, it's about how you live. It's about whether your daily routines still feel like yours. Whether you can still decide what to wear, when to eat, how to spend your mornings. Whether you can still feel useful, loved, and seen. Those things don't always show up in glossy brochures or polite facility tours, but they matter. They matter more than almost anything. And if someone tells you that you're too old to care about them or too fragile to choose, I want you to know they're wrong. You are never too old to want freedom. You are never too fragile to deserve dignity. You are never too far along to fight for the life that still belongs to you. That's the message I hope you carry with you after hearing this. And if you've already made the move, if you're listening from a room that isn't quite your own anymore, please don't lose heart. It's never too late to speak up, to ask for what you need to reclaim a part of yourself. Even in small ways. Even if it's just asking for your favorite mug, or choosing what music plays in your room, or asking to sit by the window again. Each choice is a thread, and when you gather enough of them, you start to weave yourself back together. And if you're a family member trying to make the right decision for someone you love, I hope you listen not just with your ears, but with your heart. Ask them what matters. Ask what they're afraid to lose. Help them explore every option. Because this choice, this one big decision, has the power to shape the rest of their life. Not just how long it lasts, but how fully it's lived. So please take your time, do the research, visit more than one place. Talk to care managers, spiritual counselors, home care agencies. Be bold enough to ask hard questions and compassionate enough to listen to quiet answers. Because sometimes the person you love isn't just asking to be cared for, they're asking not to be forgotten, not to be managed, not to be shelved away for convenience. They're asking to still belong to themselves. And if this message spoke to you, please don't let it end here. Share it, pass it on. Because aging doesn't have to mean fading. It can mean deepening. It can mean choosing with even more clarity what truly matters. And with the right support, the right information, and the courage to ask better questions, it can mean living fully on your own terms for as long as possible. So now, as I sit here reflecting on everything I've experienced, everything I've learned, I realize that the question we should all be asking isn't, what happens when I get old, but what do I want aging to look and feel like for me? Because aging isn't just a medical journey or a logistical one. It's an emotional, deeply personal season of life that deserves the same care, respect, and attention we give to any other major transition. The sad truth is, society often treats older adults as problems to be solved rather than people with stories still unfolding. We talk about elder care in terms of burden and risk and cost, rarely in terms of autonomy and joy and growth. But life doesn't stop being meaningful just because you reach a certain age. The desire for connection, for purpose, for identity, those things don't fade with time. If anything, they become more urgent. That's why the loss of independence hits so hard in a place like a nursing home. It's not just about what you can or can't do, it's about what you're still allowed to want. When people stop asking you what matters to you, when routines are imposed instead of shaped with you, when your voice gets softer and no one leans in to hear it, something inside you begins to quiet in a way that's hard to reverse. And yet the human spirit is resilient. I've seen people find ways to hold on to themselves even in difficult settings. One woman in our facility used to be an art teacher. She asked for paper and pencils and started drawing portraits of the other residents. At first, people thought it was just a nice hobby, but then they started requesting portraits, and soon there was a waiting list to have your likeness drawn. She came alive in those drawings, and she brought others to life too. Her corner of the common room became a place of light and conversation and laughter. It reminded all of us that even within limitations, creativity and purpose can still flourish. That's the beauty of being human. We adapt, yes, but we also reach. We stretch for meaning. And sometimes all it takes is one small opportunity, one moment of being seen to awaken the parts of us that had gone dormant. That's why I believe so strongly in reimagining how we care for older adults, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. We need more than medication and safety rails. We need choice. We need laughter. We need music and gardens and paint and prayer. We need conversations that don't rush. We need room to grieve and room to celebrate. And we need people, family caregivers, friends who are willing to sit with us, not just fix us. If you're someone who works in elder care, please know that your role is powerful. You have the chance every single day to preserve someone's dignity or to chip away at it. The way you greet someone in the morning, the way you knock before entering, the way you ask before touching or deciding, those moments aren't small. They are sacred. They tell us whether we're still seen as individuals or just patients in a system. And if you're someone who is aging, and we all are, by the way, please don't give up your voice. Don't surrender your preferences too quickly. Don't assume your comfort doesn't matter. You've earned the right to be listened to. You've earned the right to be involved in decisions that affect your life. And if you're feeling discouraged, if you're already in a place that feels too structured or too quiet, try to reclaim something small. A song you love, a scent that reminds you of home, a hobby that used to bring you joy. Call someone and ask for that thing. Speak it out loud, because the act of remembering who you are is in itself a form of resistance. And if you're younger, if you're a caregiver, a family member, someone reading this and thinking of your aging parents or grandparents, be the advocate they need. Don't assume you know what's best. Ask. Ask what they miss. Ask what they fear. Ask what they still hope for. Because aging is not the end of desire. It's not the end of longing or laughter or imagination. It's just a different stage of it. And it deserves to be honored, not handled. In the end, what I've learned is this aging well isn't about finding the perfect place to stay. It's about staying connected to yourself wherever you are. It's about not letting systems erase your spirit. It's about surrounding yourself with people who remember who you've been and believe in who you still are. So, wherever you are on this journey, whether you're considering a move, helping a loved one, make decisions, or already living in a facility, remember this: your story isn't over. You still get to decide how it's told, and your voice, your choices, your spirit, they still matter more than anything. Don't let anyone, no matter how well-meaning, convince you otherwise. Keep speaking, keep asking, keep being you, because that, more than anything, is the true heart of aging with dignity. So, if this message touched something deep inside you, if it reminded you of your own journey, your parents, your grandparents, or someone you love, please don't let it end here. Take a moment to click that like button. It's a small act, but it helps this message reach more people who need to hear it. Share it with a friend, a sibling, or anyone standing at that same crossroads, wondering what the right decision might be. And if you have thoughts, memories, or experiences of your own, I'd love to hear them. Leave a comment below. I read every one, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to feel seen and understood. If this kind of honest, heartfelt content speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next video. We talk about real-life aging with dignity and finding purpose, no matter your stage of life, because every season still matters. Every voice still deserves to be heard. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope, wherever you are, you keep